Welcome to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast, where we break down the complex and emotional process of divorce into manageable, easy-to-understand steps. I'm your host, Greer Howard, and with me is Bobby Buchanan, widely recognized as one of Illinois' top divorce attorneys, offering unmatched insight and experience in family law. Well, Bobby, we are back today, and we are talking about how to protect your digital life. And wow, there is so much that goes into this. And I think honestly can create a lot of fear, can potentially create a sense of wanting to control. And, because when you start thinking about your computer, your phone, your social media, your tablets, there's so much information. And I think that, when you're going through a divorce, it can be something that, can stress some people out. So today we're kind of going to talk through a couple different scenarios. And, Bobby, we're always here on the podcast trying to discuss, hopefully being able to go through this process and it to be amicable. And so we are going to get into the nitty gritty of like passwords and privacy and all of that. But let's kind of just zoom out here for a minute and kind of take a look at the bigger picture. And why would you say that in some scenarios when it comes to divorce, it's almost like each spouse is spying on the other and trying to find information? And then in other potential cases where someone's trying to get divorced, it really that isn't a part of it. And it's more amicable, and really some of this stuff doesn't even come into play all that much.
Yeah, Greer, great question, great intro, great to be here. Nice to see you again. This is a big one. The digital aspects of divorce and all of these different apps that we have and information in the cloud. I mean, really our life is so digital these days. The coffee shop that I go to on a regular basis has a big sign out in front that says no cash accepted, which is like pretty typical. It's more cumbersome these days to deal with paper in all sorts of ways than just have everything online. So with all of our life tracked online, it's absolutely something that we should be diving into and becomes relevant in the divorce process. But to kind of answer the initial question of why do some divorces stay amicable and diplomatic and others become very contentious? And to be clear, we're going to go through some different scenarios here, and a lot of these scenarios, they're not even going to be relevant if we can keep our divorce amicable. So what's the big difference? Well, I think the big difference is in the contentious divorce, at least one of the parties, usually both, come into it thinking that the divorce is something to win, that the divorce can be used as a process of revenge. They have a fundamental distrust of the other side. They lack, basic communication skills to be able to build any goodwill with the other side. And then on the amicable side, you have people that maybe are just in a better place personally. They're a little bit more resolved as to the realities of the situation. They understand that this isn't a win-lose scenario, that it really can be a win-win scenario if they deal with it in the right way. If they have kids, they're 110% focused really, truly on the best interest of the child, and understand that if the case devolves into fighting, that it's only going to hurt the kids, well, especially the kids. It's going to hurt everybody. And they're more focused on the goal than the process and weaponizing the process or anything like that. So those are the big differences. And as we always preach, that you can be in control of the situation. You can, if you do this in a smart way, you can keep this fast and you can keep it private. That's like the essence of what we're about.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit more, Bobby. We can only really control ourselves. We sometimes think we might want to control someone else, but it's really not able to do that. And in this process, it's the same. So you only can sort of control yourself. So how can you sort of empower yourself to do the right things when it comes to the digital side of your divorce, as opposed to being worried about kind of control?
Yeah, I love the expression "control the controllables," and those in a divorce, it's ultimately going to come down to two major things: your emotions and your communication. And emotions are going to be raw in this process, and they might feel unpredictable, but that doesn't mean that we have to act on our emotions. Like, it's okay to feel angry throughout the divorce process, or resentment, or jealousy, envy, all of these kind of negative emotions, grief. All of those things are going to happen, but what we need to do is compartmentalize them a bit, process them with our family, our friends, our therapists, rather than directing that towards the other side. Because if we direct that towards the other side and we start pointing fingers, we start communicating in kind of tones of contempt, that's not going to do anything to build the sort of trust and goodwill that we need to build to get through this process together. So if we fail in doing that, then what we're going to do is find ourselves in this world where we are distrustful of what they're doing online. We're wanting to dig into it. We're wanting to draw conclusions on what we find out about online. We're wanting to use that against them. And that's just an endless spiral that is just going to lead to higher attorney's fees, a longer process, a more agonizing process. So yeah, we're going to go into how to protect ourselves digitally, but hopefully if we do things correctly, this stuff isn't as important or scary as it could be.
Yeah. Okay, well, could you maybe sort of give us some examples of how to kind of shift the track? Like, if you're getting into this digital world and maybe you're feeling a little fearful, you're feeling a little out of control, what would be some of those things that you could focus on to, really just do what you can to keep the digital side of this, clean and safe?
Yeah, the number one thing is focus on your lane. Take responsibility for what you can. Take ownership. We should never be pointing the finger and blaming in this process to the other side. Like, yeah, you might want to vent to your girlfriend or your guy friend about, I can't believe this SOB did X, Y, and Z, and all of that stuff, but don't do it to them. Like, that's not going to help anything. Like, with your relationship with your ex or your soon to be ex has to be very constructive if we're going to get through this. And instead of, like, I would say change your tone from accusation to curiosity. I actually just had this. I mean, this stuff comes up in marriages all the time. I just had this kind of conversation with my wife. We were talking about me going to the doctor about something, and she had some ideas about what I should do at the doctor, and I said, well, I'll also tell the doctor. I think I was just telling her about a medication. I said, well, I'll tell the doctor I have this medication, but it's about to expire. And she's like, oh, you don't need to tell him that. And I'm like, all of a sudden it shifted the tone of the conversation. I'm like, I thought this was a collaborative thing here. Like, why are you just telling me automatically what to do? And I said to her, I think this would be a lot more effective if you came with a tone of curiosity rather than just like telling me directly. Because if she just said to me, oh, that's interesting, why are you going to tell him that? Or what are you thinking about why you're going to tell him that information? Then we can have a conversation rather than her just like kind of pointing the finger at me, saying or directing me to do something. I felt like I clenched up all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, this is just you telling me what to do. I don't want to do that. And there's a natural push against people telling us what to do. We're autonomous, and we feel like, I think a lot of our value is like, we want to know that our ideas are good. I just was talking to my wife about this in the context of our 5-year-old this morning. I think I saw on Instagram it was breaking down the ages of development, and like 0 to 1 is the I need to feel safe age, where if a baby cries and nobody comes to them, they develop this anxiety that carries throughout their life. And I think it was somewhere around the ages like 4 to 8. It's the how do they put it? My ideas are good ideas. Like my 5-year-old is constantly like tracking things and wanting to do things, and I really see like if we can validate his ideas and go, "Oh, that's awesome. I like how you're doing X, Y, and Z," his self-esteem will grow. We're all just 5-year-olds on the inside. So if you tell me that, if you don't allow me to express my ideas about how to do something, I'm gonna feel like you don't value me, and that's something I'm gonna push against. So
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you don't want to guess. You need to be asking questions. When you assume, you know what happens when you assume, Bobby? I mean, we all know.
we all know.
We all know it's not good.
It's not good. We shouldn't assume. Come in with literal curiosity is a powerful tool. You can ask any good salesperson, like a high level salesperson. They're going to come in with curiosity. The more that we can get information from the other side, the more we can create a space where they're wanting to share with us. And if they feel safe sharing with us their process and what they're thinking, man, that opens the door to so many possibilities. So if we're pointing the finger, if we're accusing, if we're telling people what to do, it's going to shut things down. So
Yeah,
that's
I
like
mean, I know
one.
both in coaching and in counseling, they talk a lot about when you're working with clients that you want to ask a series of questions so that the client actually comes up with the answer on their own. Because when people come up with their own solution, it's already scientifically proven that they're much more likely to follow through with it, as opposed to you tasking them with what you think they need to do. You really have to be self empowered to, actually follow through with it. I think the statistics, I don't know what it is, but it's a lot higher if you personally decide what it's gonna be.
Absolutely. And there's like different communication tools, and we should definitely do an episode on this of like what type of communication tools we can use to facilitate negotiation. Two of the most common ones that I use most of my personal and professional life are labeling and mirroring. Where labeling is something where somebody will explain something to you, and then you'll just put a simple label on it. So you say something like, it sounds like that made you really upset. Like you're just
Mhm.
giving it a high level label. The other one, mirroring, is someone finishes a sentence and maybe someone's complaining that they say, I can't believe it took you 2 weeks to get back to me. And you can just tag on to that. It took me 2 weeks to get back to you. And you just repeat what they said at the end, and then they'll continue what they're talking about. It's just this natural thing. And it it makes people feel very comfortable, and it's not manipulative. It's really just opening a space for them to talk. So I'm really interested in these sorts of tools and ways that we can empower ourselves with communication, and hopefully, that's something that we can teach our listeners, because if you can learn to do that, you can just change the course of your divorce drastically.
Absolutely. Another one I think is so important during a divorce is a lot of times you'll get some kind of email or text or phone call, and you're so stressed or you're so mad, like your emotions get really, really high about
Mhm,
something.
mhm.
And sometimes you just want to, your initial reaction is to fire back, right? To fire back that email or fire back, that text message. But sometimes when your emotions are that high, isn't it a great idea to maybe just wait a little bit? Because maybe later you're not going to be feeling that intense about whatever it might have been.
Absolutely. I mean, I teach this to our lawyers as well, because opposing counsels, other lawyers on the other side, can get kind of nasty as well, and the whole divorce process can get contentious. So we do this on the professional side. If we receive an email that just, you feel like they're making personal jabs or something like that, it's like, okay, just take a break, breathe, like let's visit this email tomorrow, or at least give it a couple hours so that we're not being in that reactive space.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some scenarios. So, we're here to talk about the digital space. And, like we mentioned, it can create a lot of fear, a sense of control. And so, let's just kind of start with some devices and accounts. Let's go with, okay, here's a scenario where you've got a watch and it was still linked to an ex partner's phone, and it keeps sharing a late night heart rate spikes, Bobby. Wonder what
Okay, so
that
that could
might
be
be.
that could be a lot of things. hey, maybe they're just going to the gym, you know?
Yeah.
And I say that in jest. They could be going to the gym or doing some intense intense cardiovascular activity. Um, but I think what this gets to is one, and I want to speak to both people here. One, the one who is doing the late night activity, their heart is spiking, whatever that may be. Yes, you should make sure that you're unlinking your watch from whatever shared device that the other side may have, because you don't need to, even if, let's say, you are just going to the gym and they're reading too much into it.
They're
And
assuming, they're guessing, they don't
they're
really
assuming, they're
know.
guessing. Like, this is the part where boundaries start to make a difference in resolving our divorce case diplomatically. So you don't need to give him that information. They don't need to have it. And I don't think you're probably intentionally doing, but make sure that your devices are unlinked. And this is something that, especially with iPhones and Apple, like, they love to talk to all the devices, want to be super synced together, and we don't even think about it. Like, you set up your device and just automatically it's synced with every other Apple device that we have. So you have to be conscious of really unlinking those devices.
I guess I have a question with that real quick, Bobby. Does it matter at what point in the divorce you do that? Like, let's say you're thinking about getting divorced. Let's say you have signed the papers and you actually are like filing with the court. Is there like a certain time in the process where it's okay to unlink the devices, or is something need to happen and then you say, okay, well, because this happened, I can now unlink them?
No, I mean, you can, legally speaking, unlink them at any point, anytime you want. It's really more of a strategic question than anything. And it's probably something like, if you have location tracking, like, some couples share their locations constantly, like they just turned it on at some point. And that's somewhat of a, what's the expression, like a Pandora's box. Like, that's something that once you turn it on, you can't really turn it off, because if you turn it off, your spouse is going to go like, why are we turning this off?
Yeah.
So I think it just gets more sticky in that aspect, where it's going to obviously start the conversation one way or the other of like, oh, you unlinked your Apple Watch, like, what don't you want me to see anymore? And it's usually related to, I feel like, a shared iPad or something. And I think we have that's the next one that we'll
Yeah.
go over.
Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to that one, right? So an example here is there's a family tablet, and let's say it's probably like in the kitchen or something, and it's flashing private texts from mom's lawyer and dad's pouring his coffee. So he's kind of seeing these texts come through from the wife's attorney, and that seems awkward.
Very awkward, and probably the most common digital faux pas, privacy faux pas that we see is the kitchen iPad that has my personal account on it, that's tied to my phone. So, as we know, when we get a text coming in on our phone, if we have it set up that way, it'll show up on our iPad. Maybe even our email is on there, and we just forget that. Yeah, all they need to do is open up the iPad, and they have the password to the iPad, because maybe we don't even have it locked, but either way, they have the password and they can open it up. They can see all our text messages. They can see all our emails, and that can be pretty bad. Like, that's one of the number one things that we worry about as attorneys, is like, a ton of our communication with our clients is done via text and via email. And we're talking about strategy, and we're talking about our concerns with the case, and we're talking about our weak points in the case and where we have exposure. And it gives a big, not only an upper hand strategically to the other side if they know about this information, but it just complicates things, because the other side's going to read into everything, think that they understand and know more than they actually probably do. And it just makes it makes settlement a lot harder when it's exposed like that. So really, especially when you engage with a lawyer and you're starting to have conversations that you don't want your ex to see because they're very personal or they're legally relevant or whatever the case may be, we got to make sure that we take those accounts off of the common area devices.
Yeah. That has always made me so uncomfortable. So I'm an Apple person. I have I've got a MacBook, I've got my iPhone, I have an iPad. But I actually, from the beginning, would not let them connect because it just bothered me. It annoyed me. I'm like, I want these things in certain places. I don't want them in all of them. And it wasn't even really to hide anything. It was just like, it just made me uncomfortable. I don't know. So from the get go, I've always had them separate.
Which I think is a great idea because, in the digital world, it's hard to keep things it's hard to keep personal things personal. Like Facebook, everything defaults to wanting to know everything. Like Facebook defaults to your post being public to the world. TikTok wants to dive into your contacts and start using like all of it. Like the algorithms are scary, and private things are. Oh, it's okay for things to be private. Like it's okay that I want my text messages to just be in my pocket. Like
Me too. I don't want them on my laptop. I just don't want them on my laptop. Like if I'm working on my laptop, I might not want to deal with my text messages right now,
Yeah, absolutely. So, and maybe everything is on a common device now, but your spouse isn't really away. Like the time to delink everything is when it's not a big issue.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
do it when like I don't know, and I'm trying to think strategically of like what's a little white lie that we could use to maybe you have to take your iPad to the Apple store to fix it for something, and that's when it kind of gets unlinked and then it's no more. It's not on there. And if you're
Yeah, I think with the iPad too, like if you have a child, like now my son has like his own little email, so his iPad can have his stuff on it. But before that, he was like using mine and it made me feel so weird. I'm like, well, what if he accidentally like texts back somebody or it's like I don't want to deal with any of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my 5-year-old, thankfully, for purposes of privacy, can't read, except for sight words and stuff like that. So he's on my phone a lot, but I don't have to worry about him going into my texts and just
Yeah.
reading, and like starting to ask me questions about like, the fact that I'm going to take him to medieval times tonight and you'll know about it.
Oh my gosh, what a fun surprise. All right, you got to tell us like how it goes next time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so another interesting one is with emails. You know how you can have that auto forward? So sometimes you might have an auto forward. So there's an example of, maybe there's an old email that is silently forwarding someone's messages and so the other spouse is like receiving these messages without the other knowing because there's a forward. I mean, you probably need to think through if any of your emails are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is just like a quick to do for us to tell the listeners, like, check your filters, check your auto forwards, turn those off, make sure that anything old like that you set up has been turned off. And sometimes our partner is a lot more tech savvy than we are. Maybe it's something at the beginning of the relationship that they set up, like the bills for some sort of the power bill or whatever was going to your email, but your spouse said, well, hey, just auto forward it to me or let me set that up. So they started setting up auto forward rules and you're like, oh yeah, that's fine. But now you have a bunch of these auto forward rules and you don't really know what they are. So you can go into your email, you can turn all of that stuff off, Google it, ChatGPT, how to do it. And it's very simple to turn off, but a good reminder, turn off any auto forward or filter sort of situations, or delegated access is another one where you could have given them entire access to your account for some reason. Make sure that's off.
And then another one to think about is your car, because your car can have like navigation. Also, maybe it has like a phone log, things like that. I mean, what do you typically tell people about, like their car?
I think about this one actually every time I rent a car, because I will connect my phone to it, my Bluetooth, and like then it starts to sync your contacts and all that. And, is there anything that someone's going to do with that information? Probably not. But it is a reminder that all of that information gets downloaded and they could then look at your call history and Maybe there is something on your call history you don't want them to know about for whatever reason, or maybe you just don't want, like, less information is better. Not because you're doing something wrong, but let's say you're doing everything right. You're not a cheater. You're not like, you're not talking to your lawyer. But you just don't want to open up that conversation and open up that possibility of your spouse. Maybe your spouse is really paranoid and they're going to look at every single number that they don't recognize and think like, is that their mistress? Is that their lawyer? Is that their whatever? So just limiting access to information could be helpful in keeping the conversation focused.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like sometimes you just can create all these stories in your mind. Your mind can just wander and create all these things that are potentially not even true. But, if you just are looking through all that information, it can just kind of create issues where there really isn't any. Um, so I think that's a really good point to think about. So let's move on to, okay, streaming and then shared services, the cloud. That's a whole other, type of things we need to be thinking about. And here's a scenario. So let's say that there was a Fire TV device at mom's new apartment, and then dad now has the zip code to find out about her secret move because through this like Fire TV device. What would be the lesson there?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this is about all of our devices are exposing more information than we realize. So if mom moves to a new location and then the Fire TV says, well, you have to update your location so that we can give you the proper channels or the proper access, and her zip code is in there, and then dad is able to see the zip code. And this gets into the sensitive subject of maybe there is kind of a domestic violence situation or a stalkerish type of situation, and mom needs to make sure she really is protected as far as where she went. Then yeah, we have to be wary of these accounts and the profiles on these accounts and the information that's in there. So usually on these devices, there's a way to what they call end all sessions, which means like every single place that's logged in throughout the universe, it's going to get logged out. You can usually find a setting, or I would just call customer service. And that usually you can get in touch with the technical team and say, listen, this is my situation. I just moved. I had my device linked at our old house. I want to make sure that that is completely logged out. I want you to help me change my password to make sure that they can't log back in, and they'll be very helpful in doing that. But again, we have to be wary of how much information is exposed just by virtue of using these services.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about the Google Family Calendar? That's a big one, right? Because so many families use the calendar to update everything. And then what if all of a sudden plans are showing up that you were hoping was not going to?
Yeah, your calendar could be one, you could invite people to your calendar accidentally. Maybe that's just something you constantly do. You can add someone else's calendar to your calendar. So maybe in the past, you added your calendar to your ex's calendar so you can see everything that's on there. And now your attorney invites you to an event or in a deadline saying, we're filing emergency papers tomorrow, and now the other side has been tipped off on that or whatever. So make sure that you understand who has permissions to your calendar. Maybe start a new calendar that is just maybe start a new email account with a new calendar, whatever you need to do to make yourself feel secure that you're not sharing that information.
Yeah, I love that idea of a new email account. And maybe with all of those services, like you're saying, if you've got a Netflix or any of those streaming services, you just cancel your old account, you set up that new email, and then it's like a fresh start. And with that new email, you're just setting up new accounts that way so that for sure nothing is really overlapping.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but man, it's going to be a good
pain in the gut.
I said pain in the butt, but I like pain in the gut.
You said a pain in the gut. I was like, I've never heard that, but it does. It's a pain.
You heard it here first, folks.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so why don't we move on to social media and screenshots? I feel like that, is something that people use all of the time. Snapping pictures of text messages, snapping pictures on social media. Let's say there was some, hidden vacation photos and they pop up And it contradicts maybe a parent's claim that they were actually home with the kids, but instead we're seeing these vacation pics. I mean, that certainly can't be a good scenario.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely evidence that could be used against you. Let's say I'm the one going on a vacation, and oftentimes vacation pictures are used in cases where I'm saying I don't have any money for alimony or child support, but then I'm posting pictures of lavish vacations on all-inclusive resorts. That could be used against me. Um, and from the personal side of the moral side of this aside, again, it creates, the more you expose your life, the more ammunition you give to the other side, even if it's not valid. Maybe somebody else, and this happens too, somebody else was paying for your vacation. Like, that's really common. So you have all these pictures that you're posting, and you're like, look at me, I'm living the high life. And then the other side's taking these pictures and showing them to their lawyer, and then their lawyer's filing motions, and you're just both costing yourself thousands of dollars in attorney's fees fighting over these pictures, when if you had just kept these pictures to yourself, there would be zero issue whatsoever, and you could just stay focused on setting a child support amount based on financial documents, rather than pick this picture that's very emotional, or triggers a lot of emotions.
Yeah, I feel like the whole social media thing, especially during a divorce, it's like you just want to tread so lightly
Yeah.
as far as like what you're posting, because it just can be perceived, maybe differently than you intend it to be, and it can just kind of get you in the trouble, it seems like. So
The default device is stay off social media, or be a consumer of social media. Don't be a producer of social media when you're going through divorce. There's literally zero to gain. I cannot think of a scenario where you're going to gain really anything of value in your case by posting on social media. So
let's talk a little bit about kids, like money and kids accounts. Maybe some things to be thinking about as far as that goes. Here's a scenario that maybe one parent changes the password of a kid's college savings account. I mean, that's not cool. Why, don't do that. I'm already like, wait, huh? What are some of the things to kind of be thinking about with kids and money?
yeah, so if if you're the one changing the password, um and you're doing it because you're worried about the other side maybe withdrawing money or doing something kind of sketchy like that, talk to your lawyer before you do it. It's not inherently wrong to change the password. Like, nothing legally is going to come of it. Like, as long as that money is staying in that account and not moving it.
Mhm.
But if you change the password, it's going to cause some sort of issue, most likely, that's going to have to be addressed. And maybe it's the right way to handle it. Maybe you go to your lawyer and you say, listen, they just threatened to take this money out of this account. What should we do? And the lawyer's like, well, we can file a motion that's going to cost a couple $1,000s to get a court order saying that they can't do that. Or you could just change the password and then we can deal with it from there. So changing that password might be the right way to do it. The the thing with the kids' college accounts and all that is that as long as that money stays there and nobody's moving it, and trying to do something tricky with it, then it's fine. Like, we don't need to litigate over it or anything like that. But at the end of the day, more transparency, the better. More trust, the better. So, yeah, it's, but the kids and the money and the college accounts, it can be, people fight over that stuff all the time. And it can be emotional because it kind of stands for like what you two envisioned with the kids and that money. And then once you split, you two have much different ideas about what kind of college your kids should be going to, how much you really should be spending. So it can get a little volatile for sure.
All right, well, Bobby, we have covered a lot today, and there's a lot to think about as far as the digital world. Why don't you just kind of give us your closing thoughts and kind of the big takeaway for today?
Big takeaway is control the information as much as you can. Make sure that you're not leaking information to the other side without knowing it. Check your accounts, delink your devices from each other. And the number one thing is control your emotions and your communication. And, that goes to how you treat your digital devices and your accounts. But the more we can do that, the more we can control the whole divorce situation.
All right. Well, Bobby, thanks so much for your time today, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast. We hope today's episode gave you clarity and support as you move forward on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Tune in next week for more insights and expert advice on the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast.